You see what this passage teaches us, which is very important for us today, is there's absolutely no neutrality when it comes to Jesus. The next passage we're going to look at in John 1, 19 through 28, is there to alert us that Jesus didn't come to be part of the religious status quo. Jesus came to interrupt, and in fact, to replace the religious status quo. Let me read. And this is the testimony of John, when the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, "Who are you?" He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, I am not the Christ. And they asked him, "What then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" And he answered, "No." So they said to him, "Who are you?" "We need to give an answer to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?" And he said, "I am the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, as the prophet Isaiah said." So these religious leaders are sent to John the Baptist because they're wondering why he's preaching what he's preaching and what he's doing. It's totally outside of the religious establishment. And they said, if you're baptizing people, you've got to be either the Christ or Elijah or the prophet. And John says, I'm not any one of these. In these verses, John is letting us know that the opposition to the identity of Jesus goes way back to the very beginning of his ministry, back to the ministry of John the Baptist. And that opposition to the identity and ministry of Jesus actually continues today. It starts with questions about who John the Baptist is and by what authority he's preaching. So this delegation is sent out from Jerusalem. Their questions are meant to challenge John the Baptist's authority, message, and mission. So what John the Baptist does is very smart. He refers to the Old Testament, the religious book that these guys say they believe. And he says, my ministry was prophesied by Isaiah. I am the voice crying in the wilderness. I am the one sent to prepare the way for the Lord, the promised Messiah. But these leaders are not done. They keep questioning John. And so John's answer is not to point to himself, but to point to Jesus. And he says, what you guys don't realize is the Messiah, the promised Messiah, is in your midst and you don't even recognize him. So what's the purpose of this passage? Here's the first thing. It's to assure you, to remind you, to reinforce that everything that is happening in the early ministry of Jesus is according to Old Testament prophecy. He is who he says he is. God is being faithful to his promises. The work of redemption marches on. Second, Isaiah prophesied that Jesus would be despised and rejected. And we're beginning to see that happen. First in the rejection of the ministry of John the Baptist, and then in the lack of recognition of the religious leaders of that day of who Jesus was. You see what this passage teaches us, which is very important for us today, is there's absolutely no neutrality when it comes to Jesus. You accept him for who he is, and surrender your life to Him, or, sadly, you reject Him and you walk away. There is simply no middle ground. And I would ask you, have you accepted who Jesus is? And having accepted that, have you surrendered your life to Him?